Hello, everybody. This is Jimmy, and you're reading with Jimmy. We're doing an analysis of Genesis chapters 5 through 9. Hopefully, you read it with me. And this is the analysis. Wow, what a story, huh? When we left off in chapter 4, before we started 5 to 9, we saw the creation of the world, the first man, woman, first murder, first sin, and Cain going out to start his own lineage. The chapter ends, and to Seth, Adam's son, to him also was born a son, and he called his son Enos. And then began men to call upon the name of the Lord. And there you have it. So the next chapters, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, we're going to see today that they are extremely important in understanding Genesis as a story. Remember, we're reading this as literature, not as the Word of God. We're not trying to dispel your faith, but this is a great story. And we want to read it as classical literature to learn how other people lead their lives and how to lead our own. So it starts with a reminder from our third-person narrator. Remember, all of Genesis is told through a third-person narrator. What does that mean? It means he's outside the story. He's talking to us from outside the story, not inside the story. And he's telling us about how God created the world, etc. So this is the book, and chapter 5 starts out, this is the book. So these are chapters probably you can look at as books of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them. And he blessed them. And he called their name Adam in the day when they were created. That's how chapter 5 begins. Now, some translators stay true to the original. They like to write in the original, and that's why we see these pronouns, he, him, right? He, them. We see these pronouns being tossed around, right? But it's important to read carefully, and you gain a better understanding and appreciation of what these translators go through when they're translating it from the Hebrew, Greek, Latin, whatever. And we're going to get to that in a minute, but when Adam was 130 years old, he had Seth, which we heard about in chapter 4. And then Adam lived another 800 years. And he begat sons and daughters, which means he had children. I want to ask you, why do you think the third-person narrator is telling us about Adam and how long he lived? Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but just recall, this is a story about what happens when God created the world. He gives man a commandment. Man breaks the commandment. Don't eat from the tree, because that day you shall surely die. So what we're witnessing in this chapter 5 are the generations, as he told us, of Adam. And what happened to these generations? Well, it's like a flashback when the narrator took us back and showed us, not just told us, how God created Adam. Remember that? You remember that flashback? If not, go back and read it. What's interesting are the pronouns. And you know what a pronoun is, right? It's a word that takes the place of a noun. Okay, so the noun is the name of a person, place, or thing. And a pronoun replaces that word. The antecedent is the word replaced by the pronoun. It's called an antecedent. And why do we use pronouns? Because it would be horrible just using nouns, wouldn't it? Jimmy said this, Jimmy said that. God created man in the likeness of God and made he him. Made he him. What do you think that means? Who's he? Who's him? Well, he is God. Made him man. See it? God made man in his likeness, which means, ladies and gentlemen, we look like God. God in the story. Okay. I'm going to get some emails already, I know. Jimmy, what the hell are you saying? No, I'm just saying, in the story, God created man in his likeness. It says so in the story. So the third person narrator, you have to believe what he's saying, or none of this is going to make any sense to you. Got it? All right. So God also created male and female, and he blessed them. And, quote, called their name Adam in the day when they were created. So he called. The pronoun there is plural, isn't it? There means more than one. And the implication is here is that Adam is the noun that's used both for male and female, meaning that man in the universal sense, right? Would you agree with that? Well, it's true to this story. Why? Because Adam is the one who named Eve. Do you remember that? And this was in chapter 3. And Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. Now, ain't that the truth? So Adam's the guy who gave the woman, Eve, the name. There are only two genders in this story, male and female. God created both, according to the third person narrator. So, okay. Put all that aside about transgender stuff. Put that aside. There's only two, male and female. Now remember, you could stop reading, you could stop analyzing, you don't have to believe this. But if you're going to understand classical literature, you have to stay in the story. Work with me, all right? At least we forget in the beginning chapters, God commanded the man not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good of evil. Remember that way back then? Seems like way back then, but it's only a few chapters earlier. For, quote, for in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die. Keep those words in mind because chapter 5 is all about dying. The woman, yet to be named Eve, has her conversation with the serpent, repeats the command, but the serpent tells her, you shall surely not die. So God knows that in the day that you eat, your eyes will be open, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. What does that mean? Well, respectfully, it means that if you eat from that tree, you're going to be like God, like gods, plural, and you're going to know the difference between good and evil, which means that as man, when God created man and woman, they don't know the difference between good and evil. You understand that? That's very important to understanding this story. So chapter 5 is really about proving what happens when the command of God is not followed. Because remember, they do in fact eat from that tree. They eat that tree. They eat the fruit. And what happens? Thou shalt surely die. They die. This story, the chapter is about dying. So in chapter 5 we read, and Adam begat a lot of sons and daughters, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. He died. What God promised would happen as a result of eating from the tree comes true. So God's prediction, the entire lineage discussed in chapter 5's opening, is how people have lived, had sons and daughters, and then died. You understand? Death is the result of eating from the fruit, the tree of good and evil. That's the result. Right? You die. Among other things like awareness of good and evil. You get that too, but you're going to die. So you see in a bit the use of the word flesh. And that's really what dies. The flesh is what dies. Because God, as you learned, is a spirit. Do you remember that? God is a spirit. He's not flesh. He's God. He created man. This is very important. So after all these other deaths, we come upon Enoch, who's the son of a son of a son of a son, and death is handled a little differently. So Enoch lived 65 years and begat Methuselah. And Enoch walked with God after he begat him 300 years and begat sons and daughters. And all the days of Enoch were 365 years. And Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. What does that mean? What does this mean? The word die and he died is not used with Enoch. Enoch walked with God. God took him. What does that mean? That he didn't die? That he did die? Walking with God seems to mean something other than death. Or does it? It's interesting at least, right? We don't know for sure yet. Let's keep reading. But death is not associated with Enoch per se, because God took him. Well, some people, Jimmy, say that that's what God took him. That means he died and God took him. He took the others too. Well, it doesn't say that. If you're reading this carefully with Jimmy, it doesn't say that. It just said those people died. Died. Now, I don't know until you die, you don't know what happens, right? You can't tell me what happens because you're still here listening to me. I can't tell you what happens because I'm still here talking to you. But in this story, right, Enoch, it doesn't say Enoch died. God took Enoch. So saying inside the story, telling us this important is very, very important to understanding Genesis as literature. Because it's really not clear what happens when people die, is it? It doesn't say anything about what happens to them when they die. They just died. What died? Well, we're going to find that out. It's the flesh. Lamech, who's the son of Methuselah, Enoch's son, who is the son of Jared, who is the son of Methuel, who's the son of Canaan, who's the son of Enos, the son of Seth, etc., who is one of the sons of Adam himself. You see how lineage is traced, and every one of those people in those paragraphs dies. And then we meet Noah, who's the central character of these chapters. So Noah is the son of Lamech, who says that Noah's birth will comfort us concerning our work and toil of our hands because of the ground which the Lord hath cursed. So remember, the Lord cursed the ground. Remember that when Cain killed Abel? Remember that? So Noah lives 500 years, a long life, right? And he has 3 sons, Shem, Ham, Japheth. And then the narrator breaks into one of the most remarkable passages in all of Genesis. And I want you to carefully focus on this with me. I'm going to read it again, even though we read it when we read, the whole chapters 5 through 7. And it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born unto them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair. And they took them, the daughters, wives, of all of which they chose. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is also flesh, and yet his days shall be 120 years. And there were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. I want you to think about that. I highlighted some of the words. Okay? First, sons of God. What do you think that means? The sons of God. Do you remember way back in Genesis when we first opened it, there was a hint that there were other gods. And now all of a sudden we see from the third person narrator's perspective, well, this is blasphemy, Jimmy. God didn't have any sons. He only had one son, Jesus. Well, no. You're jumping the gun. You can't just jump the gun into the New Testament. Stop it. Stay with me on this. Look at those words, the sons of God. This is a little different, right? Than when men began to multiply. These are the sons of God who, what? Who saw the daughters of men that were fair, and they took them as wives. So there's a little, what does that mean? A little intermingling going on, right? They have children who are mighty men of old renown. Wow. There seems to be intermingling between the sons of God. See, the Lord and God are used a lot interchangeably here, but this clearly is translated the sons of God. And I know some of you are already going to hang up on me because you don't believe it. I don't care if you believe it. I don't want you to believe it. I'm just reading this as literature. It says the sons of God took women who were fair as wives and had children. I'm just saying. This is very curious because when Jimmy was being brought up, they brushed over this passage. I don't remember reading this. And I've read this book 100 times. Note what God said, that my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he also is flesh. God is not flesh. God is spirit. We saw that before. And that his man's days will be 120 years. They will be limited. Man time is limited. God as spirit is unlimited. You see how nicely that works out? God created us. There was only one God. There were many gods, but this is the God that created us. Right? And God had sons who mingled with women and had mighty men. What's this all about? What's going on here? Well, strive means to make a great effort to achieve something. So God is saying, God as a character says, my spirit will not always strive with man. I'm not always going to strive with you, with man. Now he made man, right? But don't forget, what did man do? He disobeyed God. He ate from that tree. So God said, I'm not going to strive. This is the narrator telling us this, right? God said, my spirit shall not strive. Not always. No, I'm not always going to do that. I'm not always going to do that. So to obtain something, I'm not going to help man, strive for man, for he's also flesh. He's flesh. How did he become flesh? He ate from the tree. You starting to put it together? If he didn't eat from the tree, he'd have lived forever. And don't forget, when he ate from the tree, what did God do? He blocked him from the tree of life, which if man would have ate from that tree, he would have lived forever as flesh. You understand? Can you work with me on this? I'm trying to understand the story as a piece of literature, and that's what makes this story so fantastic and great. And still, it absolutely enhances my faith. But we'll talk about that. All right. So this is the word because. Sorry. So if you see the word flesh after that statement, I would respectfully suggest it is avoiding death. Flesh dies. It's the flesh that dies. The spirit doesn't die. Flesh dies. When God strives with man, there is no death. What do you think? Does that make sense? If I'm reading this correctly? Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com, Jimmy at readingwithjimmy.com. So, does striving with man mean walking with man? Is that when God walks with man? I think he's walking with man to help him obtain something. What do you think? I don't know. It's very interesting. Even more interesting is God sees what's going on here, right? The wickedness of man. Man who he created man. He breathed into his nostrils the gift of life. He created man in this story, right? And what? He did, he gave him the rule. He broke the rule, and there he is. Now he's populating the earth. And he sees the wickedness of man. And it was great in the earth. Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Think about that. Think about that. This is the third person narrator saying what God saw, that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil, continually, just evil. Because now God repents that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him at his heart. God has feelings. Did you know that? The God in this story. We're talking about God as a character. Forget about that's what I want you to do. Erase your blackboard and look at the story. And in this story, God, right? He made man. We saw that clearly in the first chapter. Makes man. Gives him a rule, puts him in the Garden of Eden. Says, don't eat from the tree. He eats from the tree. And it ticked him off. You know what happened, right? God really he threw him out of the garden. You know what happened. So now these men are populating the earth, and their imagination and thoughts are only evil, and it grieves God. It hurts him. And he's saying to himself, what have I done? What is going on here? Now, regret is something we can all, don't you regret certain things? Or do you? Well, Jimmy, I don't have any regrets. Well, lucky you. Lucky you. Everybody regrets something in their life, right? So even God feels regret. What is God's reaction to regretting? I will destroy man, whom I have created from the face of the earth. Jeez. Think about this. I made him, and now because he's evil and wicked, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to destroy him, which is what death is, right? Both man, beast, creepy things, birds, for it repenteth me that I have made them. Because of their wickedness, their choice of evil, what do you think the creeping thing means? That creeping, it's the creeping thing, singular. Could be creeping things. Don't forget he cursed the snake, who may have been upright, but he says you're going to crawl on your belly the rest of your days. But Noah finds grace in the eyes of the Lord. There's an exception. Noah, who is a man, finds grace in the eyes of the Lord. Noah walked with God. It says that in this chapter, like Enoch. So in the garden, remember, God used to take walks. In fact, when he's taking his walk and Adam and Eve were hiding, he said, who told you you were naked? Remember, he was walking in the garden. God takes walks. Well, Jimmy, I thought you said God's a spirit. Well, he is. Spirits can walk. Who says they can't walk? I'm just saying, right? We don't know what that means. It's not like a human being walking. It's a spirit. He's on a spirit walk. But he interacts with men that he created. He doesn't just sit on the sidelines. He's interacting with his creations. The narrator repeats the condition of the earth. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. Let me read that again. The earth was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence. I don't know. Look around. Doesn't that sound like what's going on now? So God sees the earth is corrupt, and he notes, for all flesh had corrupted his way. Whose way? Upon the earth, God's way. And so he tells Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me. For the earth is filled with violence through them. These darn men, right? And behold, I will destroy them with the earth. He's going to destroy everything. He's really angry. He's regretting what he did because people just chose evil, which is very interesting if you think about it. I'm going to stop. I'm going to pause here for just a second. I want you to think about this. They ate from the tree, which gave them the knowledge of good and evil, which means they could choose. They didn't have a choice before because they didn't know what good and evil were. But now that they have a choice, these men have been choosing evil. They've been choosing evil, and God is just not happy. He's just not happy that they're choosing wickedness and evil. Now, how do you know that that's true? Well, you remember when God was creating the world, when he would create the stars, or the earth, or the water, whatever. Every time he finished creating something, he said, "This is good. This is good." And when he created man, he didn't just say, "This is good." He said, "This is very good." You remember that? Very good. It wasn't just good. It was very good. And now he's not. And now, because these darn men are choosing evil, it's not so good. He's a little disappointed. So, who is them? Well, flesh is an interesting word. The first time the word is used is when God took a rib from Adam to make the woman and closed up his flesh. You can look that up. I'm looking at the word flesh. And it's used again when Adam says, "Flesh of my flesh," to the woman. Remember? Because she comes from his flesh, the rib. And we just saw the intriguing paragraph when God talked about not striving with man because all the time he was flesh. So flesh is used a lot. Flesh. The body. Flesh. Not the spirit. Flesh. You understand? There's a difference. So the narrator gives us a little background then about Noah. The narrator tells us Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons. He repeats that a couple of times throughout this chapters. So God tells Noah, make an ark of gopher wood, big boat, right? And he gives a lot of details. I'm not going to go through all the details. Cubit this, cubit that. They're really good details, and if I think there's actually a Ark Museum someplace. I don't know if it's Ohio, but it doesn't matter. But he builds the boat, and then God says, "And behold, I'm going to bring the flood of waters upon the earth to destroy all flesh," there's the word again, "within the breath of life under heaven, wherein the breath of life from under heaven, and everything that is in the earth shall die." So there's the word flesh again, there's the word die again. And from our reading, God and Lord is spirit, not flesh. Are you following this? So then God establishes a covenant with Noah. What's a covenant? After he destroys the earth. Well, a covenant is an agreement. It's like a contract. It's a promise between him and Noah's generations. It's a commitment. And you can Google it and look it up. It's not just a contract commitment. It's a profound commitment. It's a covenant. A covenant. So they put adjectives in front of the word if you Google it, and I don't want you to get messed up. Don't believe Google all the time. Think about it. Look up for different sources. Sometimes they tell you a covenant is conditional or unconditional. Forget all that crap. It's a covenant. It's an agreement. So I don't know if that is true so far because this is the first time we see a covenant between God and human beings. So remember, we're looking at this as literature. God is a character. He creates man. They eat of the tree, throws them out. They multiply. They're being very bad, and he punishes them. He says, "I'm going to kill you. I'm going to destroy you." Right? But he makes a covenant. The first covenant was God's command to Adam, "Don't eat from the tree or you will surely die." Was that a covenant? I think it was. It was a commitment. He's telling Adam, don't do that. Do not eat from that tree or you will die. Is the command the covenant? Well, Jimmy, it's spelled differently, so I don't think it's the same thing. Well, is it a promise? What is it? Don't eat and live forever? Isn't that a covenant? Don't eat from the tree. You'll live forever. Don't eat from the tree or you'll die. Same thing. It's a covenant. It's a promise. It's a commitment. So in this case, the covenant is that Noah and his sons, Mrs. Noah, the wives, are going to the ark, and every living thing, 2 of every sort, bring in 2 of everything, right? Male and female. You can read it again. And Noah does what he's told to do. Noah obeys God. Unlike Eve and Adam, Noah obeys God. The narrator tells us what the Lord says to Noah again with additional details, and we get a differentiation between clean and not clean beasts. He says, bring 7 clean beasts, male and female, and 2 not clean, 2, of each, male and female, with their mates, right? He said, bring them along. 7 pair, unclean 2 pair each. Genesis doesn't define clean and unclean, but we know when we read the story that Noah actually offers clean beasts, clean animals for sacrifice. I'm going to take a sip of coffee. So let's stay in the story. Here's some passages I want to read and then comment on. And the Lord said to Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for I have seen the righteous before me in this generation. And a very, very clean beast thou shalt take 7. That's what we just said. So he's going to make it rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And every living substance, think about this, every living substance that I have made, I'm going to destroy off the face of the earth. Well, Jimmy, I don't know anybody who can do that. Well, in the story, God can do that because he made you. All right? Did you ever make a cake and then it didn't turn out and you destroyed it? Did you destroy all the flour with it that you used to make the cake? What? You see what I'm saying? God is pretty angry that these men chose wickedness. Noah does what he's told. He's 600 years old. The narrator repeats Noah brought into the ark. He repeats that. Specifically, 600 years, blah, blah, blah. Right? And every living substance was destroyed, and upon the face of the ground, both men and cattle and creeping things and the fowl of the heaven. He repeats that every time. Man, cattle, creeping things, birds. Man, cattle, creeping things, birds. And they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. And the waters prevailed upon the earth for 150 days. So it didn't just rain 40 days and 40 nights, which it did. The waters prevailed on the earth for 150 more days. Got to make sure, right? Everything is destroyed. So God remembered Noah and every living thing and all the cattle, and God made a wind to pass all. So God remembers, oh yeah, I got Noah. And he allows the wind to come in, and we see it rests in the mountains, upon the mountains, and the waters decrease, and then Noah sends some birds out to make sure that it's dry and he can leave. So I want you to note, remembered, memory. God remembered. Does God forget sometimes? I don't think so, but God remembered Noah. And note the word remembered. God, in our story, made need reminders. What does that mean? Why would God, who's God? I mean, he's God, right? He created the world. He's a pretty powerful guy. Why would he need reminders? Well, you got to believe the third person narrator. God remembered Noah, which means he may need reminders, even though he's God. I'm just saying. We were taught that God knows all things, and he probably does, but there's a lot of things to know, and he may need some reminders. And God spoke unto Noah, saying, go forth from the ark, bring them out, right? Creeping things, discuss. He brings them out of the ark, and they go, and they're so happy, right? That's the dry land. Noah went forth with his sons. Everything is happy, and Noah built an altar to the Lord and took up the clean beasts and the clean birds and offered burnt offerings on the Lord. So he doesn't take the unclean. Now what, Jimmy, what is a clean beast versus an unclean beast? Well, we don't know. We know some are clean and some are unclean. Use your imagination. I don't know. But Noah only uses the clean ones for sacrifice to God. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Why would you want to anger God with something unclean? So the Lord smelled a sweet savor. That's from the clean beast. And he said in his heart, I will not curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing, as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night, shall not cease. This is a very important passage. He smells the sacrifice. It's sweet. It makes him he's God now, right? He just destroyed the earth, except for Noah and his kin. And he says, and the Lord says in his heart, you see this? This is the third person narrator telling us what God is telling himself. God is not saying this to Noah or to us. He says it in his heart, that he will not again curse the ground anymore because of man's sake. So he's cursing the ground because of what man was doing, not because the ground is cursed, although it's cursed. But it's man who makes him curse the ground. But he's not going to do it anymore. And why? Pay attention. The imagination, there's that word imagination again. Remember, imagination was used, every imagination was wickedness. The imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. This is a very interesting observation by God, right, to himself, that man's heart is evil from his youth. You're evil from your youth, but I'm not gonna smite everything again, even though that's true. I'm not gonna do it. So he regrets doing it, right? And he promises himself, I'm not going to do it again, even though the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. So he blessed Noah and his sons, be fruitful, multiply, and fear you. And he tells them, all of the beasts of the earth, every fowl, upon fishes of the sea, into your hands they're delivered. He's delivering, he says, you've got charge of all these beasts and fish and fowl. Every moving thing will be meat for you. Every living thing that liveth, everything that liveth is meat for you. Even the green herb, I've given you these, even from the ground. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, you shall not eat. What does that mean? Human beings, flesh. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man of every brothers will I require the life of man. And whoso sheds man's blood, pay attention, by man shall his blood be shed. So he's saying, eat anything you want on the earth except other men. Don't be a cannibal. You see that? For the image of God made he him. You don't want to eat other men because I made you in my image. Do you understand that? And you will be fruitful and multiply, etc. And note the word flesh, right? So God spoke to Noah again, said, and I will establish my covenant with you. And here's the word covenant, where we find out about the rainbow. Remember this when we read it together? I set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a token of the covenant. So whenever it rains, he's going to put a rainbow in that cloud. And that's a signal to God of my covenant with man. That's God's promise not to destroy the earth again, right? Or to kill everybody. That's his promise. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me, you, and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow, the rainbow, shall be in the cloud. And I look. So people call it a rainbow today, but they call it a bow, which it is. It's a bow, right? If you're Irish, you think there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. And I will look upon it, and I may remember the everlasting. I'm going to look upon it. God will see the bow and remember between God and every living creature upon the earth. This is the token of the covenant that I have established between me and you and the generations. Got it? So, it's, everybody lives happily ever after. Not. We're not done. This is a very interesting, ending. So Noah's sons went forth, Shem, Ham. Ham is the father of Canaan, right? So these are the three sons of Noah, and of them the whole earth overspread. So they went out, they started lineages of their own, they went everywhere. And Noah became a husbandman and planted a vineyard, and he drank from wine and was drunk. He got drunk one day, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brothers without. And so Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on both of their shoulders, and walked in backwards, and then covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backward, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So Noah awoke from his wine, and he knew what his younger son had done unto him. Right? Ham, is that right? That's what Ham, what did he do to him? Well, he saw him naked. And he said, "Cursed be Canaan, his son. A servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren." So he's cursing Ham's son, Canaan, and says, "You're going to be a servant to servants." And he said, "Blessed be the Lord God Shem," that's his other son, "and Canaan shall be his servant. And God shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant." So poor Canaan is getting the brunt of seeing of what Ham did. And Noah lived in the flood 350 years, and the days of Noah were 950 years. And then he died. Noah dies. Wait a minute, Jimmy. He walked with God. How can he die? Well, it says it. He died. He died. The thing to think about is the word nakedness in this thing. What does that mean? Remember in chapter 2 what nakedness was? "This is now my bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. You shall call woman. Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother and cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And they were both naked, man and his wife, and they were not ashamed." This is the beginning of the word nakedness. When God created man and woman first, they were not ashamed. They were both naked. You remember that? Chapter 2. So they were both created by God, and they were naked and they weren't ashamed. But then after they ate from the tree of good and evil, right? Their eyes were open, and they knew that they were naked. You remember that? Chapter 3. "And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons, and they heard the voice of the God walking in the garden. And Adam and his wife hid from the presence of the Lord among trees of the garden. And the Lord said to Adam, where are you? Where art thou? And Adam said, I heard thy voice in the garden, and I was afraid, God, because I was naked, so I hid. And God said, who told you you were naked? Did you eat from that tree where I told you not to eat? And you know what happens, right? You know the rest of the story. So the next time we hear about nakedness is right here in the story of Noah. Noah gets drunk. He's laying in his tent naked. Ham sees him naked, goes out, tells his brothers. His brothers come in, cover him up, right? I want you to think about this for a moment, right? They felt no shame when they were created. They ate from the tree of knowledge and felt shame. That's why they hid. And remember, don't forget, God also makes them some clothes before he throws them out of the garden. Remember that? So what is shame? Google says it's a painful feeling of humiliation or distress caused by conscience of wrong or foolish behavior. Wrong or foolish behavior. So staying inside the story, being naked is wrong. Being naked is wrong. You understand? So when he created them, there was no shame because it wasn't wrong. But then after the tree, there was shame. Shame did not exist before they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So that must mean in order to feel shame, you have to know evil, right? And not how Noah's sons walk in who saw Noah naked. Remember, they go backwards. They don't want to look at him. Their father. It's their father. So if you Google the question of why punish the son, Google tells you this absurd comment. You ready? So one of the things I like to do is go to Google sometimes just to show how stupid Google is. So if you Google, and I Google, why does God punish Canaan, right? Ham's son was cursed because Ham committed a grave sin against his father Noah, which is probably incest with his mother or sexual abuse of Noah. What? I want to say a really bad word now. What? I'll lighten it up. What the hell is that? Where did that come from? Do you have any, when you read these chapters with me, do you have any even hint of what the hell that says? This is all BS. This is why Jimmy tells you stay inside the story, erase your blackboard, and read what the words tell you. There's nothing in here except nakedness. That's the shame. That's the shame. And it makes perfect sense when you realize when God created man, they were naked, but they had no shame. They ate from the tree. They were naked and they hid themselves. So nakedness here, right, transforms into being something okay, into something not okay. Not okay. So there's absolutely zero evidence of this stuff, right? All we know is that Ham sees Noah naked, and he tells his brothers, right, to go, and they go in backwards and cover him up. And then poor Canaan gets, he gets the brunt of it. He's punishing him for everything else, right? He's got to serve everybody. Maybe this is where the sins of the father comes from. Have you ever heard that saying, that the sins of the father are visited upon the son? But wait a minute, Jimmy, that don't make any sense. Noah didn't make a sin. Well, he got drunk, didn't he? Isn't this exciting? So these chapters help drive the plot of Genesis. We see God decide to punish his creation for their wickedness. Every imagination of the thoughts of man's are continual evil. That's a serious charge. Every imagination are continual evil. I want you to think about that. Everything you think about is evil. That's what God is saying that these men did. And that's why he got ticked off and destroyed them all except for Noah. So the decision is important to understand how it came about. Eve, who ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil with Adam, gave us the choice between good and evil. I think we should write a thank you letter to Eve. Why? Well, because without that, we wouldn't have a choice of good and evil. Would you? Well, Jimmy, how do you really know what's good? How do you know what's evil? Well, that's up to you to decide, right? So in these chapters, we see what man, God's creation, was only focused on evil. He only focused on evil, except Noah. who was a righteous guy, a just guy, and walked with God. So God regrets his decision. He just says, this ain't working out. And write a thank you note to Noah. Because without Noah, he wouldn't be here, right? Did you ever regret something you did? Well, except for Noah, who found grace with the Lord. So what is grace? Google tells us in theology, grace is God's unmerited, freely given love, favor, help, etc. to deserving people. It's divine influence, etc., originating from, expressed through Jesus Christ. The problem is Jesus is not in the story yet, is he? And I don't want to, you got to stay inside the story like I've been telling you. So God's favor and love, that's what grace is, right? To undeserving people. That makes no sense either because Noah found grace with the Lord. Noah's very deserving. We saw that he's just. God saves him. He kills everybody else, right? So grace is a hard word to define. Noah's just, his generations. Noah walked with God. Why would he be undeserving of grace? But anyway, just think about this as you do this, because like Enoch before him, they both walked with God. And remember, God liked to take walks, didn't he? And so he saves Noah and his family, and he as samples all of the beasts that he created. And he destroys everyone else. And when he's finished destroying everyone else, he makes a covenant with Noah and his sons and wives and so on with the rainbow. He calls it a bow. So every time it rains, you might get lucky and see a rainbow. Well, the interesting thing now is that God, Lord, repents that he had made man on earth. And it grieved him at his heart that he destroyed him afterwards. So he vows, I won't do it anymore. And he regrets destroying everyone, doesn't he? And that's why he does his covenant. You've been reading with Jimmy. This is Jimmy. Thanks for coming by. Read more about the Bible, and we're reading it as literature. You can email me, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com, jimmy@readingwithjimmy.com. And remember, we're not reading it as gospel, but our intention is not to harm your faith. It's to deepen your faith. And I think that's exactly what these chapters should have done. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon. Have a great day.